Hi folks, Doc here. Man, it's been a miserable week. I feel like I've been rid hard and put away wet and dragged through a keyhole backwards and beaten like a bad puppy and every other term you could use to describe somebody that's just generally trashed. It's been a fun one. Haven't had time to do any wrenching lately, which is kind of criminal because that's sort of my escape from the everyday and the BS that life tends to hand you on a fairly regular basis. And I haven't had the opportunity to do any wrenching, so it's just been a tough week. But that being said, time to move on. So I kind of figured I needed to, take a bit of an aside and do one of those smaller tasks that's still going to take some doing, but it's not a big picture thing. So I'm not going to, do driveline work to Mule 3 right now, and I'm thinking about a transmission conversion on Mule, and that's a whole big other project, and I got this and I got that, and I figured I'd take on something just a little bit smaller just for today, just to give me something to do, something to escape with, and just kind of see how that goes. It's one of those things that has to be done, so I'm gonna take it on as a little side project and march away at it. On the main Mud Mowers Facebook page the other day, I made a comment, just kind of a little micro rant that some of you probably caught, and it was with regards to metric pipe fittings. And so some of you now already know what I'm talking about, and for the rest of you, stay tuned. Alrighty then. So let's see what we've got on the workbench this morning. Today is all about getting that Garrett T3 turbo onto that. That's right. Today we are going to fabricate a manifold adapter and get that Garrett T3 turbo onto my little 2-cylinder Kubota diesel. This shall be interesting. And of course, once all that's said and done, I've got a pile of plumbing to do, the oil lines and the intake adapters and blah 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 blah. But for now, let's just concentrate on the first part of the process. So here's what we're going to do. I have to make an adapter that's going to mechanically connect this to the exhaust manifold on the engine, and of course the port on the turbo has almost nothing in common with the port on the engine. So I have to make a piece that's going to physically couple the two and provide an airtight seal for the exhaust gases to pass through and spool the turbo. So we're going to do that with a couple of things. We've got a couple of pieces of plate here. This is about 3/16 of an inch thick. I could go quarter, but it's not really necessary. This is strong enough to do the job. And I've got a section of steel pipe here, and this steel pipe is about the same thickness. It's standard schedule 40 pipe, 1.25 inch size, which is the nominal inside diameter. And we're just going to basically make a flange that matches the turbo, and we're going to make a flange that matches the exhaust manifold on the engine, and connect them with a short section of 2.5 or 3 inches of pipe. So turning back to these things, you'll see that I've already got my shapes laid out. And I'll show you exactly how I do this. I use a couple of different methods for making both flanges and gaskets. I'm going to make my own gaskets too. And I'll just give you a quick rundown on how I do this fairly quickly and easily. And there's really no voodoo to it at all. Anybody can do this with common supplies. And we're just going to take some masking tape here, which is refusing to cooperate with me. We're just going to lay the tape out enough to cover the flange completely. And kind of stake it down. It does help to clean the flange a little bit. And we're just going to burnish the edges with a finger, just to define it so that we can kind of see where it is, and burnish over the holes for the bolts. Just got to find them. And the edge of the port. Now we have creases in the tape now that show where these things are, but it's still a little bit hard to see what's going on. So the next thing that really helps a lot is a dirty finger. So we're just going to reach in here and grab a little carbon off the inside of the turbo. You can do this with anything. Heck, you can do this with motor oil. And it's kind of like doing a charcoal rub for those of you that are into art crap. I'm not. And look at that, we've got a very well defined, perfect copy of the port. So, all we're going to do at that point is take whatever steel plate we want to transfer this to, or to a gasket. You can lay this out on gasket material. Just lay it down, tape it down reasonably flat. Try not to rub it too much because you don't want to take away the picture you just drew yourself. And we're going to grab an X-Acto knife. A nice sharp blade would be good. Just cut it out. Nothing at all to it. Just try and get as close to the lines as you can. And when you strip the tape away, this is what I get for not changing my blade first, because after cutting on steel the blade gets a little worn. It is best to use a sharp blade. Then, you know, you're left with your pattern. And then all I do at that point is just grab some cheap paint and just give it a little fog. Doesn't have to be, you're not painting the part, it doesn't have to be finished. And then when everything is said and done, you know, you're left with your outline, and you can, you know, cut that out and drill it out and grind it and do whatever you got to do. The next thing I'm going to do is prepare these flanges, get them ready to go, get them drilled out. I've already selected a hole saw size that worked for the diameter of the pipe that I'm going to use, so I'm going to wind up racking this into my drill press and cutting a hole. And I've center punched the bolt holes for this flange. I haven't done it for this one yet. I'll get to that. Now with this one here, we've got kind of a rectangular oblong hole, and of course I've got a round pipe. And you'll see that when I offer the pipe up to it, you know, you don't exactly have the right coverage. You know, square peg, round hole, something along those general lines. Round peg, square hole. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to, as closely as I can, locate the center on this one, and I'm actually going to drill this out round to match my pipe. And then at the end of it all, I'll probably get at this with a die grinder, and either the flange on the turbo or this flange, or maybe both, and I'll just do a little bit of port matching to smooth the flow as it transitions from the square to the round. Okay, so I've got about everything set up and ready to go on the drill press. I've got the stock centered and clamped down, and I've got my 1¼ hole saw bit ready to go. The hole is already piloted. I've got me some cutting oil here, and just got to figure out what I did with my safety glasses. Oh, here they are. And let's have at her. There we go. Alrighty. Yeah, this bit's just about had it. I've had it for a long time. I've put it through a lot of steel, and I'm kind of amazed it's lasted as long as it has. But then again, that's why we use the cutting oil and keep the drill speed down as low as we possibly can. I've got it on its lowest setting, and just generally try and go easy on her. So there we have it, folks. There's the hole, and that will coincide fairly nicely with the diameter of the pipe. jammed her up there. Whoops. There we go. Hole's piloted. And now we're going to make it the final size. Always drill up in steps. Your bits will be a lot happier. Okay, that's all the drilling. So all that's left to do for this flange is to whip out the old grinder and cut the shape out. Okay there, little cleanup work with the grinder, and we've got our flange. Okay, so port flange number 2, done. And as you can see, it's got a round hole in the middle, as opposed to the rectangular thing that was there. And all I did was I sliced myself a little section of the same pipe that I'm going to be using, more or less centered it in the general area, marked it, and lined up my hole saw with that. So, 2 flanges, good to go. Before I get any further, I'm going to lay them out on my gasket material and just trace them so that I have the gaskets, set to go. It's a little bit easier to do it this way than to, wait until the manifold adapter is already built and try to make the gaskets. Okay, so I just took a quick moment to just roughly hack off a couple of pieces of gasket material and trace the flanges onto there. I don't know if you can see the pencil marks. It's just easier to do that, especially to get the centers before I've assembled the manifold adapter. So I figured at this point, while I still have the flanges as individual pieces, I'll go ahead and trace the gaskets out, and I'll cut them and punch them later. Next order of business is to cut myself a section of this pipe so that I can go ahead and start getting the pieces together. Okay, so I've cut myself a section of pipe that I figure is a good enough length, and as you can see by the inside edge, the cutting it has left it with a burr, and I don't want that. Anything that interrupts flow is going to reduce power. Plus, we don't want any little metal chips coming loose and going through the system. So a little cleanup with the die grinder. Comes on while I'm filming. Awesome! But as you can see, that compressor that you hear is Big Bertha there. I did get her running, and she's running beautifully. I think I've about figured out my positioning. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing again, so I can do this without losing my spot. Jockey a little bit. I think that's about it. Just going to get a couple of spots on that to hold it. Flip it over and get some good tacks. hold the whole deal together. Okay, so she's still a little warm from tack welding, but here we have the piece that, yes, I must continue to hold in my welding gloves because it's smoking. So what we're going to do in a couple of minutes is I'm going to whip open the garage door and burn this in. I'm not going to bother filming that, it's kind of pointless, but because of the flux core especially, I'm going to have to ventilate. It's going to be smoky as hell in here, and I'm probably going to have to give it about 10 or 15 minutes while the piece is cooling for the shop to air out, and then I can clean this up. Alrighty, the part's still hotter than Hades. I've aired out the shop. It's looking pretty good. Got a little bit more slag and flux to clean off, but for the most part, she's good to go. Okay, little cooling, little cleanup, little assembly. There we have it, folks. That's what we're left with. One Garrett T3 turbocharger sitting on one Kubota Z400. The manifold adapter worked out well. I've got to replace the bolts with stuff that all matches and whatnot, because I was kind of scrambling through a bucket of bolts trying to find just enough to get her mounted for now. But there she is, folks. That's step one. I have to plumb the intake air side, so I've got to take a hose or a pipe from the outlet of the turbocharger to the engine's intake manifold. Kind of stuffed with that rag right now. And I've got to get the oiling system plumbed, so I need to take a pressurized oil feed from the engine somewhere and feed it into that oil inlet there, and that'll feed the bearings in the turbo and keep them happy. And then I've got to take the oil return, which is where that bolt is sticking out right there. Lighting's a little weak on this side, I apologize. And send that oil back to the engine. The last order of business, well, I mean, other than actually fabricating an exhaust system for this thing, but that's a piece of cake. I can do that when it's all said and done. The last order of business is a little bit of support. That turbo's got to be good for 15 or 20 pounds, easily. And I don't want the whole thing swinging off my exhaust manifold on the engine there. Now, I've got some mounting options here. I've got a tab that I can take advantage of there, sorry for the camera shake. And I've got a larger tab down there. However, until I start getting things in place, engine mounts done, yada yada yada, you know, suspension, I don't want to fabricate a bracket right now because I'm not sure what's going to fit where or interfere where. So I'm going to hold off on the support bracket for now and call that good for the moment. And when I've got another 5 minutes, start turning my attention to plumbing this thing the rest of the way. Alright folks, that about wraps it up for this portion of the show. Once again, thanks for following on my journey of madness and mechanical mishaps and, yeah, shop stuff. Wrench, wheel, wreck, repeat. Thanks for watching and sharing and subscribing. And until the next time I see you, take care.